You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, the CJ Mars Radio Network. Truth, cover-ups, lies, and in-between, conspiracies, and those who dare to speak the truth. Get ready for a walk on the wild side. Welcome to Parley with your host, Michael Gray.
Hi all, this is Mike Gray and welcome to another episode of Parley. And we got a really great show for you tonight as always, or whenever you happen to be listening. We have with us JC Johnson. JC, there?
Pleasure to be here.
How are you, sir?
Doing real good. How's everybody out there doing?
Oh, we're all doing good, hanging in there, just taking it day by day.
But all we can do is take it day by day.
That's right. Hey, I just want to, you're a cryptozoologist. Is that how you would identify yourself?
Essentially, that's at least probably the most easy explanation for some of the stuff that I've been doing. I would almost say I'm a demonologist in some ways too. So,
sure, you're like the flip side of Elizabeth Warren.
Well, it's just the different things that we've gotten involved in are pointing to something deeper and darker in a lot of cases. And it is going out on something that would have a wolfen appearance or an upright walking wolf or essentially even your typical Bigfoot, Sasquatch, furry people sighting. That's more benign compared to some of the other stuff that we've been going out.
So some of the things we're going to cover tonight, I hope we get to it all, is skinwalkers, possibly, Bigfoot, little folk, black-eyed children, and what's going on in the Grand Canyon.
Oh, even ultra-terrestrials and forbidden archaeology.
Yep. And we don't remember. You got to tell the story of your encounter with that woman in the middle of the desert with the black eyes.
I will. At least you didn't take my memory, just my sense of direction.
So what would you like to start off with? I'll leave it up to you.
Whatever you guys would like to start off with. I'll do a little introduction. I was typically a river and outdoor guide for the last 30 years, and it was some things that started happening about 16, 17 years ago up on the Mogollon Rim in Arizona that we couldn't explain, and had a couple horrific incidents up there that led me pretty much to go from essentially where I could have been a victim and just never went into the woods again, or to go and look for what scared the living hell out of me. So that's kind of what has been my mindset.
Oh, so you had a personal experience.
Years. Yes, we did.
Oh, okay. Well, let's hear it.
Well, I had once again, I was an outdoor guide and so forth, and I had a Arizona paddle club and outdoors. It was a kayak and canoe club. And we would get together, friends, and we'd get together through the site and so forth and plan events. And a lot of times we'd end up on the Verde River or end up at the Blue Ridge Reservoir up in the Mogollon Rim at about 7,500 feet elevation. It's a deep alpine lake with wonderful ponderosas and aspen trees. It's gorgeous. And it looks like a river because the water they have backed up is the old Clear Creek and the big Sandy Wash backed up proper. So at one end, you can go from the landing and go about 5 or 6 or 7 miles, depending on the water level, back into the canyons. And if you go to the other end, you can sometimes go 5, 6, 7 miles back the other way. So it's a lot of water and it's beautiful. And it's a great place to get together for a paddle. It's a great place to get together to go fishing, to go hiking, exploring, things of that nature. So sometimes I would have camps out there for weeks at a time, and I would go into town and pick up some work or if wherever I was doing and come back out to the camps, and a lot of the people were saying, explaining some of the strange things that happened to them in some of these back canyons. And I was trying to put their mind at ease. Oh, it was this, it was that. But, we had different things happen. We'd be out, gone for most of the day, go back to these remote camps way back in the canyons, which you could pretty much only get to via the waterways to get back there. And I knew it took hands to move around the salt and pepper shakers on the table. And I knew it took hands to do a lot of the other object manipulation that was going on while we were gone. But to ease everyone's mind, we came up with ridge bear. And when we came back to the camps and strange things were set array, I would say, oh, ridge bear must have come back again, because we couldn't explain it otherwise. I'm trying to put a common anomaly on this where everybody can go, oh yeah, it was ridge bear. I couldn't tell them otherwise what was going on. I had suspicions, but I didn't know. And in some of the accounts of some of the people who'd stayed out there while I was gone and some of the other members of the club or or charges that I'd had back there were gone. They had some very interesting things happening that they couldn't explain, that they were really uncomfortable with. So one spring, I would get there just after ice out. And we still have ice chunks floating and sheets of ice floating. And I'd go back to with my canoe, and sometimes I'd have an outboard on it or a trolling motor. And my buddy Christian and I got there one early spring. It was still fairly cold up at 7,500 feet in the Arizona mountains. And it was a dry winter and a dry spring. And there was bear sign on every piece of shoreline going down to the water everywhere. Almost 12 miles of water all around it through these canyons had bear sign coming down. I'm like, I'm not camping with that many bears. I've done that before. Got a T-shirt, bumper sticker, and a keychain. Not going to play that. We were going to leave, and I remember there was a 10 by 15 rock flat on the top, sticking up out of the water about 3 feet. And I went back and I found the rock, and I said, hey, we could put the tent over here on this end, and we could put the chair here, and we could put the little barbecue we brought here, just enough room to move around, and we don't have to leave. And there was a sheer cliff all around the front of this rock, about 80 feet up, and about 30 feet of water. And I was thinking, very hard for a bear to come down and, have to swim to our little rock out in the water. So I was fairly confident we were going to have any bear problems. So we set up camp. We took some bungee cords and duct taped some rocks and threw them over the side of the big rock and held our tent in place. Got it all pretty well set up, comfy. We'd run into 2 other fishermen out there that day. They weren't going to be staying the night. So we had about 10 square miles of this mountain to ourselves. And we were cruising around, drinking beers, fishing, trolling for fish, and, making noises, singing silly songs. We weren't going to be bothering anybody. We had the whole place to ourselves. And that night we got back to the rock, barbecued some steaks, and I think we probably turned in around 10. And about midnight I woke up and I had shoes on my chest, socks on my chest, beer cans on my sleeping bag, everything in the tent my buddy could throw at me. I have the propensity to snore very loud when I've had too many tasty alcoholic beverages. So he was trying to wake me up from snoring. And I'm cussing him out, and I go, what's the problem? He said, you were snoring, but that's not the problem. No, he goes, listen. And we could hear it coming out of the back canyon, and it was a scream. And it was coming toward us and was moving across the ridge. And we're down here in the water, and we've got that, 80-foot tall cliff, about 30 feet out in the water behind us, and we can hear it coming. And my buddy was stationed in the Black Forest in Germany for a while with the Army, with a tank brigade, and he goes, it's a banshee. We heard those over in Germany. They have 3-inch long claws, and they travel through the treetops, and they rip you to shreds. He goes, it's a banshee, it's a banshee. And it sounded like something potentially could be coming through the treetops, but it wasn't. It was something making a trail to us through the forest, busting branches as it came. And it got right on the ridge above us, and we stuck our heads out of the tent, and I just made out a great big figure. I just had a little sliver of the moon, but at least 10 feet tall, very wide at the shoulders, and I'm just in shock. And the decibels coming out of this thing's mouth aimed at us in this horrific scream.
Wow.
The first things it did, it threw a 3x5 rock like a discus, and it just missed my canoe. And it made a big splash. And it was like a 150-pound rock. And it just missed my canoe and boosh, made a big splash. And then it made a wave, and then the audible of my canoe banging against the rock, and this thing screaming. I mean, I'm just like, you know, it was like something out of nightmares. And I was very fixated on that figure up on top the ridge above us. And we've got our heads sticking out of the tent. He started picking up forest debris and tossing it down on us. Not like really hard, but enough that it would hurt. You had pine cones and little rocks and stuff coming down on top of you, so we'd retreat back into the tent. And this thing is still screaming the whole time. And at one point it took one big breath, and it sounded like a 300-pound lung filling up. And then out came the scream again. And you're just terrified. This is like something we're not wired for, you know, completely unexpected. And my buddy, you know, to this day, he calls it the Blue Ridge Banshee. And the name kind of stuck. And now other incidents and activities that have happened to people back there, they all call it the Blue Ridge Banshee. It's not. It's a Sasquatch. And there's families back there, families of the furry people. So I think we interrupted his nap. So finally he turns and walks away. And as he's walking away, he made a trail going out. He's smashing down tree limbs and everything all the way out. And we climbed up the cliff, up to the top of that ridge, and we saw the trail he made in the next day and the trail he made out.
Wow.
So, yeah, I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk to anybody about it. In the outdoor club, they heard something happen there, and I finally I put together a fairly sanitized version of what happened there for the paddle club and called it the Blue Ridge Banshee. But, and I've been back there a bunch of times. I didn't go back there for like a month. I couldn't bring myself to go back there, and finally I did, because most of the time I'd be back there a lot of times by myself for days on end in these back canyons.
Now, are you of the opinion that these things are shapeshifters as well, or they're just completely physical? That
gets complicated, and it'd be too easy to try to put it in a box.
Right.
I will say that they do have abilities that we don't have. Have I seen, other than my own personal witnessing of these creatures, and over the years, you could put about 9 of them or 10 of them in a police lineup, and I'd tell you where I saw them, what they were doing, and what I was doing.
Oh, really?
I've had that many close encounters and sightings. And, I don't count the ones I've seen through night vision or the ones we've lit up with lights at night and so forth. I'm talking about really coherent.
Has anyone gotten a really, really close-up film or picture of these creatures?
Unfortunately, I think the Patterson-Gemlin film from the one
where it's a female and walking away?
I think that's probably still your best piece of video evidence that is still hotly debated and contested even today. I've seen some other stuff that's very interesting, and I've seen some other stuff that hasn't been released yet. And it's not mine. It's not my stuff. Don't be badgering me, hounding me. Oh, where's the video? No, I've seen stuff that people are sitting on until they're finished with their study. That is actually pretty good stuff.
It almost makes me wonder if all those elongated skulls that they find.
Absolutely, and Brian Forster
if they're not the ancestors, or basically the ancestors of them, they've gone feral. People do go feral.
We got to imagine you've got several different classes of the unholy union of angelic principalities and humankind. And you've probably got several. One of the things we're told about is the offspring. Some of them were giants. A lot of them were absolute frigging freaks. And a lot of them were something else. But it is DNA manipulation from a very long time ago.
Right. Yeah.
So your elongated skulls, if you start looking at what Brian Forster's finding down there. On the back of our skulls, we've got 2 plates. A lot of these skulls have 1 plate. So it is not skull binding. It's not all the other convenient explanations they would like to give us. These are not human, or not entirely human, whatever they are.
Wow. If anyone has any questions in the chat room, we're taking questions in the chat. And if you want to talk to J.C. Johnson, now's your chance. It's 716-745-4266. That's 716-745-4266. I hate it when they give the number and they say it real slow, real fast. Well, yeah, everyone. This is, CJ Mars, this is right up this radio station's alley, because they have a lot of paranormal shows, so you're like the cat's meow, But, yeah, I tend to think that that these Sasquatch, because they're all over the world. I mean, they're in China. They're known as the Yeti, and
Yeti,
they're pretty much ubiquitous,
But you've got different body styles. Even in the Four Corners area of Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah, and that's Crypto Four Corners. That's why I call us Crypto Four Corners. We've got at least 3 different body styles that we've witnessed. And typically it isn't like, well, some are fat, some are tall, some are skinny, just like people. Typically what we see in the high desert, 5,000 feet and below, is more of a Chewbacca-looking thing, ganglier, not the big broad shoulders and big huge chest. That's typically what we see in the lower elevations. When we get up into the mountains, those guys look like linebackers. They got the six-pack abs, the great big huge shoulders and chests, and just really muscled up.
Right. Hey, there was a question in the chat. Could you smell a Bigfoot? People say they have a distinct smell. Could you smell anything?
Oh yeah, not that first direct encounter. I'd had other things happen to me that made me scratch my head, but after that night, what I saw in the moonlight, the height and width of this creature, and that it was bipedal, it was a humanoid kind of shape. I didn't smell anything that night, but other times back there, I smelled things. And since then, I can pick up several unique odoriferous odors and distinctions of these furry people, believe me. And sometimes it's the wet, dirty dog, or the wet, dirty diaper dog, or the wet, dirty horse, dirty diaper dog. I mean,
right? Yeah.
We've got a video on YouTube where we're gathering some DNA for Dr. Melville Ketchum's whole genome study, and what this guy was after, he chased a skunk into an irrigation pipe, couldn't catch him, so he punched holes on either sides of the pipe and carried the pipe out into the middle of a field. And it's a fairly heavy pipe. And the skunk bit the heck out of him. He left a bunch of blood, and he left some skin on the pipe when he punched it open from his knuckle. But eventually, he got the skunk. The first thing he did was tear the skunk scent sack off. That was the very first thing he harvested, because they got there right after the incident out there, and that was the first thing removed from the skunk was his scent sack. So he was desperate to get this.
Okay.
And you get the skunky smell with them sometimes too. I don't think that is something they produce themselves. I think it's imported from skunks.
Oh, so you're saying the Bigfoot are actually like capturing skunks, probably killing them and eating them, and then utilizing the scent glands to musk themselves.
Yeah, imagine if you had babies and you covered them up in skunk scent. You had a jaguar. Right. A jaguar cruising around the islands on the San Juan River in the Four Corners area. The last thing on that jaguar's menu is a skunk. And that was a game changer out in that area, is we had at least one female jaguar show up, whereas for many years the islands on the San Juan, the furry people would come down early spring and they would birth there. On the islands, they'd be safe at high water from just about anything. Cougars will swim when they have to. They don't like it. They're not really a happy water kitty. Jaguar love the water.
Yeah.
And this big female showed up, and she was swimming to the islands. So I do believe this was a desperate act by the father, and later we found out he was a male, and he had black hair, but he was red-haired dominant, and I do believe his mitochondrial mother was African, human mitochondrial mother from the DNA.
What?
Yeah, and that's what happened with this study. It had over...
Okay, wait. So you're saying that a Bigfoot hooked up with a African-American female?
No, I'm telling you the original mitochondrial mother, which could go back as far as 15,000 years.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. I thought you were saying...
You know, when you do the
Right,
mitochondrial DNA,
I'm sorry.
it's the first mommy. First mommy.
Yeah.
And but when you go further into the study, we had Germanic heritage, we had Jewish heritage, Asian heritage, Native American heritage, all on the human mitochondrial side from all these different samples.
Right. Hey, people are asking about your YouTube channel. You want to, you just go to JC Johnson, right?
Yeah, you probably go to JC Johnson or Crypto Four Corners, CRYPTO FOUR CRY Corners, CORNERS, Crypto Four Corners.
But if you just punch in JC and then Johnson, you have a channel.
You'd probably find me on YouTube that way too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it is under JC Johnson and Crypto Four Corners.
Right. I got a question in the chat here. Did someone approach you about the dog man, or did he search them out and find witnesses?
As far as the latest investigation, the Lakewood Lichen, that was someone who contacted Lon Strickler from the articles Phantoms and Monsters, and he referred the case to me. I happened to be in Lakewood at the time. What a surprise. I went and met with the witness, and Jack Carey and I have been doing follow-up investigating on it. And I'm up near Canada right now working on some other projects, and Jack is still working on follow-up with that investigation. That's also a video on YouTube, the Lakewood Lichen.
Okay, cool. Hey, you want to tell that quick story about the black-eyed woman you met, you and your friends?
We would have to go back to the ultra-terrestrial investigation, which is a whole nother can of worms. And that's available on YouTube. I won't go too much into it. But essentially, this craft went over a Native American family outside of Gallup. And they locked themselves in their homes, and little gray dudes got off on the roof and ran all over the property. And so doing, the uncle next door got into it with one of them, the gray aliens, and dispatched it. Beat it to smithereens, or at least into submission. So go ahead and go look at that video. There's a lot of interesting things. At any rate, what struck me funny, other than the fact that they had flying saucers and gray aliens, is what brought them out of their hogan, which is a Navajo 8-sided dwelling. What brought them out of their dwelling in the first place is they heard miniguns, artillery fire, bombs, all kinds of crazy explosions and stuff going on. And that's why they came out of their hogan. And they saw the craft. And when the craft got closer to them, they went into their hogan and locked, shut the doors and so forth. So in our follow-up investigation with Jack Carey, we were doing a perimeter around their home site lease, looking for any kind of ground engagement, any kind of, tank tracks, anything like that. Just
sure, yeah.
Some kind of ground engagement, or was it an aerial engagement? So we had to rule out a ground engagement. Didn't find too much on the ground supportive of some type of ground engagement with these craft. So we're leaning toward aerial engagement, and that's what they heard. They probably heard miniguns from F-15s, F-16s, A-10s, hell, I don't know. But they heard something battling with these craft. And essentially, in the end, what the craft did, by going over the homes of these people, whoever was engaging them had to disengage, or they would be, it'd be all over the news. Air Force blows up hogan and family dwelling, that would be harder to cover up. So whatever they were doing, engaging with the craft, they were smart enough, whatever they are, whoever they were, the ultra-terrestrials, to go over these people's homes, and the engagement stopped.
Right, yeah.
So, going back, combing the desert, looking for signs of some type of ground altercation from some type of troops. I would say on our side, because I guess our tax dollars, I don't know who they really work for sometimes, but our tax dollars pay for some of these troops. We didn't find anything, but going down the road, we've got our witness Bradford and this lady are driving their Jeep. Jack Carey and I are in the back seat, and they're talking back and forth. And they got like some rap music going, and they're going back and forth. And they go, JC, we see something up the road. And we're on a little 2-track road next to the railroad tracks. And they go, it's a Bigfoot. No, it's an alien. It's a girl. I go, a girl out here in the middle of nowhere. And I roll down the window, I kind of stick my head out, and I look, and from a distance, she's got an attractive silhouette to her, and as we get closer, kind of an attractive bone structure to the face, kind of from a distance, pretty. And I'm like, we need to slow down, ask this person if we can help her, give her a ride out of here, whatever. This is not.
And you're out in the middle of nowhere, right? There's no stores. Yeah.
This is not a good place for someone to be walking alongside the railroad track. So as we got closer, she had kind of crazy hair going on, and once again, attractive features. But she was wearing this one-piece denim outfit that was filthy, ripped, torn, grease-stained. I mean, looked like she slept under a truck for a month, And she was wearing 6-inch cork heels, walking through the tumbleweeds. And I'm thinking, is this a crazy person, or there's something really wrong here? But roll the window down, and I say, hey, can we help you? Do you need a ride? Do you want some water? Can we help you with anything? And I made eye contact with her, and her eyes were jet black. Wow. No iris, no pupils. And Jack Carey's sitting beside me, and she answered me, but I didn't hear her audibly. Jack heard her voice. I don't think I heard her audibly. Just once I made the eye contact, she had me. And Jack Carey immediately was going to stain the upholstery from the bottom side and blow chow on the back of our driver from the top side. Became immediately ill on sight. And as I looked at her, I was totally entranced. And my core temperature just went way up. And Jack finally broke my gaze with her. And he's pale white as a sheet, and I'm red on fire. And we're both, she got us, and we're both going to the driver, go. And finally, driver looks back and looks at it. He's like, oh, there's something wrong with it. That weird chick's weird. Let's go. And boom, he took off out of there. And we're in Dukes of Hazzard maneuvers, flying, jumping down this 2-track road. And, we probably, 3 to 6 miles. I don't know. And I was burning up with like a fever. And we finally made it to the tree line. I was fairly convinced, I want to get out. I want to walk. I want some fresh air. Jack needs to get out, needs to walk, get some fresh air. And we're out, cooling down, looking around. And then she's just down the road coming toward us.
Wow.
Pack in the Jeep. She had to run about, I guess, 40, 50 miles an hour to keep up with us. That's pretty good for, I guess, a girl. That's, I don't know many girls that can run that fast. But
in 6-inch, what was she in high heels too?
I couldn't tell at that time. I just saw the figure coming toward us. I'm like, go.
Hey, JC, we got a break. We're going to take a quick break, and stay tuned, folks. Do not go away. You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York. CJ Mars Radio. I'm Mike Gray, your host. This is Parley. We'll be right back with our special guest, J.C. Johnson. Oh, soft break. So, how long? And we're back on. And we're back. And this is Parley. I'm your host, Mike Gray. And we're back with J.C. Johnson, our special guest. Yeah, so, boy, that black-eyed woman, wow. And what's funny is when you hear all the people that have encounters with these black-eyed children, that they just have this, I guess, a sense of dread that comes over them,
Yeah, and like I said, I could see some poor old Navajo sheepherder out there come across somebody like that, and out in the middle of nowhere, and feel sorry for her. That's how they get to us. They put themselves in kind of helpless situations. Mister, let us in. We're cold. Things like that. They put themselves in helpless situations, counting on our compassion, and the next thing you know, they're pulling your spleen out through your nostrils. And
Yeah.
that's not hearing her voice, looking into the void. Not hearing her voice. I felt she really wanted to get into that vehicle and do harm. And at the same time, I was okay with that. You ever
wonder what makes something so evil?
Once again, she could have been horribly, demonically possessed.
Yeah.
And just, there could have been a legion inside of this girl. I don't know. And, my dear friend David Weatherly has got a book out on the black-eyed children. Overall, it's a fairly new phenomenon as far as coming into counter subculture and people discussing and talking about things. But once again, time and time again, it's the knock on the door, Mister, our car broke down, we need to use your phone. And then, they look and see completely black-eyed children. I know we can buy contacts for about $300 that make your eyes all black. But, Jack says in the video, and I agree, I mean, she bought black contacts to freak out a couple investigators out in the middle of nowhere. Unlikely. And then we go from there to the physical and mental deficiencies that happen to us immediately upon looking on her. That's physical evidence as far as we're concerned with our own persons. So we were not reacting to a girl wearing black contacts. We were reacting to something deeper and darker and more sinister.
All right, yeah. Did you ever hear, when you were talking about those gray aliens and how one of the guys dispatched it, did you ever hear the Credo Mutwa interview, David Icke?
I don't believe I have.
Oh, yeah, because he says that his grandfather was a security guard at some warehouse. This was in South Africa. And there was a little person, there was like he saw in a shadow, he threw a hammer at this person that he thought was a thief breaking in. And it turned out it was a gray. And it freaked his grandfather out. And then in that interview, everyone should go listen to that interview. It's on YouTube. He talks about he was invited into a hut, and the people showed him like a piece of meat, and they said this was part of a gray's hand, and they cooked it, and they offered it to him, and he ate it, and he said when he ate it, it tasted like copper, like it had he said it tasted like sucking on an old copper penny, and then it gave him an acid high.
How bizarre, and I work with aerospace people, folks who are involved in the spy satellites and the Apollo programs and the Skylab and things of that nature, and I think we've all pretty well come to the opinion that the alien grays are not a race or a culture or a society. They're bioengineered meat puppets.
They're manufactured,
with just about the intelligence of a 286 computer. And once again, you take them outside of their program, they don't respond very well. So, I mean, they're definitely expendable to a point. I mean, Roddy John, another friend of ours, he killed one with a samurai sword. We've interviewed people who've killed them with a baseball bat, and the bodies don't stick around. I believe Roddy John had his in the freezer, and somebody came and got it out of the freezer. Luckily, and it's up to him what he wants to do with the photos, but, he got some really good photos. And that's up to him to what he would like to do with them.
Wow, yeah.
But yeah, they're nasty little spuds. Think of the one that's probably programmed like Chucky. Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
That would be bad. The Chucky program.
Have you seen the Skinny Bob on YouTube?
I think I have. I'm not sure.
Yeah. That thing looks real to me. I mean, if that's some kind of a puppet, they did a really good job. Especially where the eyes blink. Bottom line is, when you take people
against their will, and you do horrible things to them against their will. And then you probably put a chip in them. This is one thing we deal with too, and it's unfortunate. Once you become a test subject to these black-eyed bastards, whatever they are, you are a test subject till they pull the plug on you. They will come back and get you again and again and again and again and again. Whatever it is they're up to, whatever it is they're doing, and it's unfortunate for the abductees.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's horrific.
It is.
It's a violation,
Well, it is, and the ones, the people are like, oh, I got to see my offspring from the eggs they took from me, and they're all cool with it. They violated you in the first place by snapping you up wherever they did and took you up on their platform wherever it is they took you. I mean,
Well, they lie to them and tell them, oh, in another life, in a past life, you agreed to this in a contract.
Yeah. No, we didn't.
Yeah. I think that's,
I didn't. Nobody agreed to it. And you're giving them consent if you agree to what the lies are that they're telling you. It's an invitation. Just with all this other dark stuff that is out there, you make the invitation one way, shape, form, or the other, something's going to show up and accept that invitation.
Right. You revoke all contracts. You say, I revoke all contracts. All contracts are null and void. Because they were based on a lie.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. If anyone wants to call in, 716-425-4266. We're taking phone calls, and if anyone has any questions in the chat, feel free to ask. And we have with us J.C. Johnson, the Indiana Jones of the paranormal or cryptozoology. Yeah, I'd say crypto, not paranormal. Although you do deal in the paranormal.
Well, I think one of the best quotes toward the end of his life, they asked John Keel if he was a UFOologist. He said, no, essentially I'm a demonologist. And in the end, because of what was coming forward, I mean, we're looking for intelligent life from another planet or outside of our solar system, and come to find out that what's going on here has been with us the whole time. And we've been victims of them whenever the opportunity would arise for them the whole time throughout our human history.
Hold on. Correction. The number was written wrong, and I just read it off the chat. Sorry about that. The number is 716-745-4266. Sorry about that, folks. 716-745-4266. If you have any questions for J.C. Johnson. And so what are your just a quick question. What are your plans for the future? I mean, you're going to be doing a documentary or, well,
obviously,
I mean, what's your goal?
We would like some mysterious benefactor to come in and put gas in our tanks, get us on locations and so forth. We've toyed with some possible television potentials. Once you make a lot of these topics for a producer, especially if a field producer is going to be out there with you, when you make the topics real, they disappear. That's the end of it. They want the fluff. Oh, we want you guys to go, what was that? Did you hear that? The prospects of actually finding something or running into something out there that they can't explain terrifies them. So, I mean, I don't think television's in our future because we're not going to pander or candor for a program, and it isn't about guaranteeing to find anything. We're just inviting you to come along. That's all.
Have you ever?
That's all I do with the YouTube anyway. It isn't a.
Right.
Our entire concept is not a show me, prove me situation. The entire concept is bringing you along in some of these investigations at no charge. We're basically commercial free on YouTube. I don't have anything for sale. Everything we do is out of pocket. I think the most elusive, more elusive than Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, is this cryptid check writer. When people say you're out there doing this for the money, there is no money. Find me that cryptid check writer. I'm looking for that son of a gun. I am. More elusive than the Loch Ness Monster.
Where's all the money gone? What about GoFundMe or Kickstarter? Have a Kickstarter campaign.
I just don't want to do it. the good Lord's provided me thus far out of pocket, and everything's worked out thus far just fine.
All right.
And, if a producer, a production company wants to pay us to come out and hang out with us, that's their money. I'm not taking money from you guys or anybody that's involved with what we're doing, or the many people who subscribe to us on YouTube. I'm not taking money from you. I'm taking money from someone else. Doesn't come out of your pocket.
Well, that's noble of you, It really is.
Someday we might sit down and start writing books. Hell, I don't know. Right now we're still deep inside the book. So I'm not even there yet. The memoirs. Give me some whiskey.
I wonder if someday these things will be caught. I mean, like, really caught. You know what I mean?
Oh, I hope to be a part of, essentially going back to the DNA study. As far as I'm concerned, with 3 whole genomes, you and I could go down to South America, capture a monkey that looked kind of weird, bring it back, do a whole genome on it, and if it's so much percentage-wise different than the other monkeys, we could name it. We have a new species. With the Sasquatch Genome Project, Malva Ketchum sequenced 3 whole genomes from these samples. That's a new species. But Scientifica, gender bias, and the old boy school of science, fully in control of the information you're getting, what's being brought forth and present, is afraid of anything new or new ideas. So I guess it'll be a while, folks.
Yeah. I found that that's the skull story was pretty interesting. The kid the young man that found the skull in the desert, that was pretty interesting.
And that just makes you wonder, because that if you put flesh and fur on that skull the way he described it, that is so many descriptions of the skull of the upright walking wolf and dog man, skinwalker, something out there. The only thing, the closest skull description we could get would be like a 300-pound javelina, and they only get up to about 45, 50 pounds. So, it just, the teeth structure and everything else. Tough call, but whatever was attached to that skull was not a good thing. He couldn't get rid of it. So, anybody?
You almost got to wonder if these things are like spirits that can manifest for a time as a physical form.
No, you just don't. Was this a werewolf that bought it out in the desert and they happened to find his skull, or a skinwalker that, got filled full of buckshot or arrows, or, who knows? Who knows? But there was definitely something evil attached to this skull. And Michael, from the video, realized I need to get rid of it. And at first, he went out just a few miles from his house, dumped it, drove back in the Jeep, and it beat him home. And then he goes out four-wheeling through the canyons, over the mountaintops, and throws it over a cliff. It beats him home again. That's pretty freaky-deaky. So, and then his buddy Cody talks him into taking him out where the skull is after they've lifted whatever it is as far as the curse with his Native American friend and so forth. And then Cody brings it back. And then I talked to all those kids what that skull would do on the coffee table. It would turn around. It would levitate. It would freaky-deaky stuff. And that's just, and Mike, it didn't affect him anymore because he washed his hands of it, but everyone else it started to affect.
So, I'll tell you one thing. A friend of mine, he goes to, Thailand and Bali and all kind of crazy places, He brought a mask. He collects those masks, all kinds of those, wooden masks. Some of them are beautiful. And he gave me as a gift, when he came back, this wooden mask. It was really elongated. I was like, okay. And ever since he gave that to me, I've had a lot of bad things happen. I kind of started him on the back of my head tracing, going, what's going on here, And all of a sudden my attention went to that mask, and I got it out of my house. I took it to a park and actually poured lighter fluid on it, or not the, lighter fluid. To start a barbecue? And the damn thing wouldn't burn.
Yeah, I've had to destroy things like that, and it wouldn't burn. Gasoline, lighter fluid.
Yeah. The park had a barbecue, barbecue pit, this thing. I just poured lighter fluid all over it, had sticks, paper. Damn thing just would not burn. Would not burn.
I tried to send a Ouija board up like that one time. I had to build a separate fire of hot embers and coals. And when I put it on top of that board, it took forever. But when it started burning through the front face of it, it screamed.
Wow.
That thing was loaded. There's things out there waiting to occupy anything. There's so many disenchanted, disenfranchised demonics out there floating around looking for any opportunity to occupy something because they're just disenchanted spirits. You could throw a spirit into a teddy bear. You could do that, if you wanted to do the witchy poo stuff. I mean, they're everywhere, all around us. If we could see what was going on around us all the time, we would lose our minds. Absolutely lose our minds. And there are folks who can see what's going on all around us all the time, and they've lost their minds, or at least they're put up in a convenient nut house somewhere, and right. It's not their fault. They can see what's going on. And we're protected to a point that we can't see all these things that are happening. There's a battle going on all the time.
So do you think sea salt around the house protects you?
I don't give any power to anything outside of my convictions, and that's another thing too. I mean, I'm sure before the word came to a lot of people that sage and cedar was something to keep skinwalkers away, and in fact it still does, but that's a temporary fix. I would rather have 24/7 protection, and I have that. I don't need to burn anything. I don't need to burn incense, cedar, sage, 24/7 protection.
All right.
Well, I had a question, and I wanted to bring it back to the Bigfoot and your genome. And do you worry about anybody actually catching them, and what might actually happen to them if the wrong person caught them?
The thing is, the government,
the traditional scientists.
The government's had bodies for years. They've had roadkill. They've had misidentifications from hunting and so forth. They always come and get the bodies, even with the dogmen. Those who've dispatched the dogmen, eventually the body's taken away from them. And they've had this stuff for years. Whatever's going on with these entities, there's something about this they don't want us to know. Absolutely.
Do you think they have live ones?
We have eyewitness things from hospitals where they had a Sasquatch in chains.
What? Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I can't give too many details, but I mean, the nurse talked to an associate, a professor friend of mine, about what she saw. And it was at an Air Force base of all places. And she said she looked at it and just felt such sadness for it because it was chained and on the floor. She was off in the wing of the hospital she wasn't supposed to be in. I guess she was new.
That's crazy.
But
that's what I worry about.
They've picked up forest kill from forest fires, roadkill, misidentifications. They've had the bodies for years. And they can't control what's going on. If they could catch it, cuff it, beat it down and put it in a cage whenever they wanted to, then we'd know about it. They can't. They don't have that kind of control. So the government's not going to be the one to full disclosure. And everybody out there asking about disclosure of the aliens. Full disclosure of some of the aliens and the dark entities that are out there would be giving away some of the accomplices of these black projects and black budget things that are going on because they're fully in cahoots with these dark entities.
Question from the chat.
I believe that.
Does JC think Dr. Ketchum's work will endure in the light of the armchair skeptics?
I don't care about them. I care about the different doctors, scientists, and PhDs that are coming over to actually look at the paper and wanting to do a replication of studies. Therefore, we're launching another genome project here shortly. And here's the deal. It's the science of the whole thing. Dr. Todd Disotell, Syracuse, New York State University. He has a problem with any kind of human mitochondrial. And the thing is, if I was to cut off a piece of my ear and Michael spits on it and pricks your finger and puts blood on it, and we send it in for DNA testing, you guys come back as the contaminants in the second party. So to throw contamination at non-human hairs with human mitochondrial is ridiculous because the contaminant shows up. It does. That's the second party. So you can't claim contamination every time you get a non-human hair coming back with human mitochondrials. Sorry. It doesn't work like that. So if in the mind of science, it's not what I want it to be, if the closest living relative to the furry people, Bigfoot Sasquatch, comes back to be hippopotamus, if that's what the science says, then that's the end of it. It's not what I want it to be. It's not my hypotheses on what I think it is. It's what the science in the matter dictates the subject is.
Now, do these things have an RH factor negative? Or
I think they had different kinds of blood types coming back on the human mitochondrial side.
All right.
You had RH negatives, different things coming back. It was not one size fits all, I believe, with a blood pattern.
Okay. Well, because every president since Eisenhower, that's when they discovered blood types, and every president since Eisenhower has been negative, RH negative.
Well, that's because they've got Dracul.
Right,
Dracul. Yeah. I mean, seriously, guys. That's
we
go back.
Line,
Let's talk some DNA and genealogy here. That's unfortunate. But that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
Bush
I really wanted to get into
Dracula. The Bush family throws their. They go back.
Bush is related to
yes.
Obama. I mean, that little girl. That little girl did a whole family breakdown. And
Cheney.
all of them
Cheney is
related.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. They're all related. Cheney's related to Obama, and then McCain. And they're all related to the Bushes and the Queen of England. And it's all one big family.
And once again, as in the days of old before the flood, the offspring of the Nephilim were in power in all their freakish demises and states and elongated heads and or extreme giants and or going back to your Greek mythology characters, your Apollo, your Zeus. There probably were such type people. And here's the deal. The offspring of the Nephilim lived for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it'd be really easy. My great-grandfather worshipped Zeus at the mountain, blah, blah, blah. And I will too, because he's a god. He's a god. Well, as in the days of old and as in the days of Noah, so shall be the second coming of the Son of Man, as in the days of Noah. And we're in those days again. We've got lesser entities as far as public appearance. We don't have some giant ogre with one eyeball, ruling over this peasant class, because we've always been the peasant class, and we still are considered the peasant class compared to these creatures, because they're preserving a bloodline from the unholy union of angelic principalities and humankind.
Right, yeah.
But they've got a 1%, 2% thing going on, and my furry folks out there are probably about 20 to 30% of the bloodline that they probably look down on them as lesser creatures in their eyes.
Well, they said, as far as the RH negative, it's only 5% of the world population is RH negative. 5% of the world population. But in the United States, it's 14% of people that have Rh negative blood.
It's fascinating. It really is when you go down the rabbit hole and start looking at everything and look at where we are, who we are, and where we are at this particular junction in time. We're really close to some great big scary things going on.
Yeah.
And it's been planned for a very long time. But even the useful idiots that serve those who think they're this elite bloodline from an unholy union, even the useful idiots are just cannon fodder to them too.
So what was your first aha moment? Was it being scared in the forest, or have you always been very aware of what's going on and the
I've been
potential?
scared in the forest many times. I mean, but that's your catalyst event
Right.
for me to, all right, I'm not going to live in town the rest of my life. I miss canoeing. I miss kayaking. I miss hiking. I miss guiding trips, and I'm going back, and I'm going to go back by myself. And whatever comes out, I'm going to face it. And it was a quiet night. The first time I went back, that was kind of an interesting thing is up on the ridge above me, I heard like Congo drums or something, and it was like a drum group, but they really sucked. Like, oh, you're not that good. Yeah, you're out in the middle of nowhere. You're miles and miles from the nearest road. You've got back there by water, and you hear this drum group on top of ridge. And it was about 3 a.m. I woke up and I'm like, I was going to go get up there with my 1,000,000 power candlelight and light them up, as best I could, and yell at them, tell them shut the hell up and things like that. And after they bang on these Congos or whatever for a while, I'd hear a bunch of debris roll down the ridge and hit the water. It was insane. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I finally found a flashlight that worked. It's about 3 a.m. It's about March. No, actually it was June. It was June. Still cold at night up that high. There's no air. There's no oxygen. And I was going to get in the canoe and go around the next bend, climb up the ridgeways, shine my lights on them, yell at them, whoever was up there to shut the hell up, And suddenly it all quit. And this, I was on a sandbar, and there was still some snow up on the either side of the ridge. And there was hardly any fire whatsoever. And trying to climb up the ridge through the snow that was left was a messy prospect. So I was mostly burning a little wood and then crawling in my sleeping bag. Well, the next morning I'm going out, I'm looking up the ridge, trolling along with my canoe, and I hear all this noise on the canoe. It's aluminum, bunk, 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 bunk. And I look down, a bunch of wood's floating. A bunch of it. So I'm like, wow, cool. And so I start picking the wood up, put it in the canoe, and I've got a pretty good haul, and I've got all of it. I'm like, it's all wet. I want to burn this tonight. I'm going to party tonight. Yeah. So I start putting the wood on the shore to dry, and I look, and it's been twisted apart, and this is fairly green wood. And I look at it, and I start putting the trees. Yeah. I start putting the trees back together on the shore, twisting them back together. And I was thinking it would take like Hercules to twist this wood apart, right. But anyway, I left it on the shore, and then I went out and fished all day and goofed around, and I came back toward the evening, and I started loading the wood up, and I looked at the top of the ridge. I go, thanks, Blue Ridge Banshee.
Oh, man.
Hey,
JC, we're going to take a hard break.
Okay.
And we'll be right back. You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, CJ Mars Radio. I'm Mike Gray, your host. This is Parley. We'll be right back with our special guest, J.C. Johnson.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, the CJ Mars Radio Network.
Okay, we are back. This is Parley. I'm your host, Mike Gray, and we are back with our very special guest, J.C. Johnson, and also our caller, Ann Francis. Hi, Ann. Ann is
Hello.
there.
Hello, Ann.
That's who. Yeah, that's San Francis. And just a special
Hi.
announcement. Parley, shows are being shuffled around on the radio station, and to make room for other shows, Parley is being moved to Fridays at 8 o'clock. And so I just wanted to make that announcement. So if you tune in next week, we might not be on. Another show might take our place, but we'll be moving to Fridays. So that'll be fun. And we're back with J.C. Johnson. And J.C., you there? You're
Yes,
there.
I am.
Yeah, I was looking on your YouTube, and if you want to see I recommend going to J.C. Johnson's YouTube page. He's got some really excellent videos. I was watching them today, and I've seen them before, but he's got some really cool stuff on there with just all kinds of fascinating stuff. I was watching the one with the Grand Canyon, and there's some kind of activity with helicopters, and you want to touch on that?
I'm glad Ann stay on the line with us, if you would, because we're going
Sure.
to correlate a little bit, because this goes deeper and darker. But essentially, in 1909, we've got G.E. Kincaid doing a solo trip down the Grand Canyon. He's a headhunter for Smithsonian Institute, and they had people all over the Southwest looking for antiquities. In fact, every time you read about a giant skeleton being found anywhere, Farmer Brown, with the 13-foot tall skeleton he found out plowing his field, is waiting for a representative of the Smithsonian to come and contact him. And then after that, we don't hear about anything ever again, because your original CIA is the Smithsonian. Anything that didn't fit into their narrative that they fed us, the useless eaters, got taken out of the narrative. So let's go back to the Grand Canyon. G.E. Kincaid, solo trip down the Grand Canyon, which I've been down the Grand Canyon. A solo trip in 1909, that guy had some balls. So I'll give it to you, bro. Ooh! All right. Anyway, he sees some tailings coming down from the canyon wall. And that, to him, I believe he was somewhat of a geologist and some other studies, meant that there was some potential mining that had gone on. Essentially, he was looking for old Spanish gold mines in the Grand Canyon. So with great difficulty, he climbed up about 1,600 feet above the canyon floor and found an entryway, a doorway, if you will. He lit his old gas lantern, stepped inside, and inside the doorway, the first thing he saw was a Buddha-type statue and Egyptian statues and ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and things of that nature. Looking around this facility, for all intents and purposes, it's a multicultural facility, thousands of years old, if you will. So we read about later other people from the Smithsonian coming to investigate this underground facility. The way Kincaid described it, as far back as they went, it was like spokes inside the wheel. It was a huge facility. He said you could have put up to 50,000 people in this underground facility.
Wow.
So, going on that, and with knowledge of the Sipapu being very near this area, we start kind of tying the two together. And the Sipapu, the Hopi-Zuni legends, is they came up to the fourth world from the Sipapu. And they rebelled against Masa, the god of the underground. And he finally let them go, and they came up to the fourth world. They've been taken underground by the ant friends or the ant people for 3 other cataclysmic things that happened to the earth. I believe there was a fire incident, a water incident, the Great Flood, and an ice incident. They were taken underground for these and protected by the ant friends. Once again, they rebelled against the ant friends, the ant people, and were let go into the fourth world. Well, digging a little deeper, and this is probably mostly on my end, but I think what we had occupying this facility as overlords was the Anunnaki. And I think what G.E. Kincaid and the Smithsonian ran into was an Anunnaki art collection, not a multicultural facility, if you will.
Meaning,
Right.
You mean, okay, what you're saying is the Anunnaki went around pillaging.
They went around pillaging, and they like to take people to work for them. And if we read the Sumerian tablets, they always had to put together some kind of slave race or slave people to mine for them, to grow corn for them, things of that nature. You know, that was their modus operandi, if you will. And it's interesting, too, because the ant people, the ant friends, and Ant can back this up, the Hopi word for ant is Anu. The Hopi word for friend is Nakai, ant friend. Anu Nakai. Anunnaki.
Yep.
So basically, the Anunnaki saved them not for altruistic purposes, but saved them like a farmer saving his chickens from,
Which is a horrible thing. And that's not belittling to any race, class, person, or people. I'm just telling you, this is what it all points to. Now we go back to the Hopi culture. They've got drawings in the rocks of railroad trains and cars and people riding on top of them hundreds of years before they ever got out here with trains. They had foreknowledge of a lot of different things. So there's lots of interesting things going on with the Hopi and the Hopi culture. Also, they said in the end times, the sky was going to look like cobwebs. What do we have with all this geoengineering over major metropolis areas is cobwebs in the sky.
So they've done this before.
No, I think this is the renderings of the end, essentially the end of this age, the end of everything coming to a culmination.
No. What I mean is the Anunnaki before.
Well, the Sumerians,
chemtrails, their own version of chemtrails in the sky.
No, not necessarily. I just think that's, as far as a Hopi prophecy, I think that is right on. As far as the Anunnaki, what they did with the Sumerians, and in the Sumerian text was Zechariah Stitchin, all I can really say is it sucked to be a Sumerian. And I will say this, too. Nobody ever really checked Zechariah Stitchin's homework on interpreting the tablets. So I'll leave it at that.
Right.
And I'll leave it at, I don't want to become a possession of the Anunnaki, whoever they are. If they're not
fully... But what do you think
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
What do you think the helicopters were? What do you think the helicopters were doing in the canyon when you were there?
I think they were dumping equipment for uranium exploration, which hasn't been approved. But if you're an alphabet agency and you show a badge to somebody, they'll just go ahead and let you do whatever the hell you want to do anyway. So they're doing it without permission. It hasn't been passed. It hasn't been approved.
Again.
But they're going to go ahead and do some more uranium exploration. And once again, we go back to the situation while we were there, seeing the Sipapu, seeing the little Colorado feeding into the big Colorado from the Navajo side of the perspective of everything is the Grand Canyon in 3D. It's right up in your face. It's like nothing you've ever seen. It's so beautiful. And I would like people who want to see that to go to the trouble of navigating 35 miles of two-track roads from the main road to find this area. I don't want to resort there, nor do the inhabitants of the area or the people who've lived there for hundreds of years with land home leases and from the government land home leases and grazing leases. They don't want to see a casino and a hotel and a tramway down to the canyon bottom, nor do we. But that's all a cover. I guarantee you, of course they'll put the hotel casino above ground. The first thing they're going to do is drill down to that underground facility because it's already there. In the power elite, whatever you want to call them, they'll go down there and put in air shafts and condos because they've already got this huge underground facility. There's something coming they have foreknowledge of, and they're going underground, and that's a party that we're not invited to.
Right. They've got their tickets already.
Denver Airport. You got the Queen of England's bought properties in Denver near the airport. I mean, a lot of the stuff just all kind of ties in. And there's things under Denver Airport, I guarantee you. They hide in plain sight. Demonics, the sick, wicked, bloodthirsty, maniacal, demonic people who've made a perfect peace with the Dark Lord are out there in plain sight, hiding in plain sight, in power, elected over us. They're there.
Well, they had back in, I think, the 80s, the Air Force had this nuclear-powered, it was almost like a caterpillar, where it was a boring machine that the tip was made out of some kind of some kind of metal that would get so hot it could melt rock. And as it went through the rock, it would just, make a circular tunnel, and it would be glass, a circular glass tunnel. And this thing, it said, could go 8 miles a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing too.
They had a name for that machine too. It was like Betty or something. Yeah.
Going back to the Grand Canyon situation, I was out there with David Etcher Childress. You see him on Ancient Aliens all the time, and he's an unconventional archaeologist. He's got a dozen million books out there. I was there with Christopher O'Brien, Clifford Mahudi. He's a Zuni elder. Ronald Reguera. He was on all the Apollo programs. He was on all the spy satellites and the Skylab program. So he's essentially was involved in all of this aerospace for many years. And we're all together kind of an eclectic group of people. But Christopher O'Brien, going back to him, because he's done some extensive things on the Dulce area and in the Four Corners area. And he talked to some of the people who worked on blasting some of the tunnels. And what they ran into were old tunnel systems. That all they had to do is go and widen them.
Yes.
They were running into old, ancient tunnel systems. As but essentially, there's some need for national security with some of these DUMBs, the deep underground bunkers. Okay, there's some need for national security, but essentially, Los Alamos hooks up with Alamogordo and White Sands, and we get up into Dulce, and then we get up into Area 51. I mean, they got cut-off points, stop-off points all the way. We have these underground facilities. We've got bullet trains down there. We've talked to ex-security guards who got into a bullet train at Los Alamos, and in about a half an hour, they're up at Area 51 to report for their duty, for their shift. So we've got the technology. It's going on. It's been going on for a long time.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Some people say that there is a train, an underground train, that can take you from the East Coast to the West Coast.
We've talked to team drivers, and that's your guys in the big rigs who've driven underground for 3 days, nonstop, where one guy gets out, takes a leak, the other guy gets in. They got little truck stops underground. We've talked to the team drivers who've driven underground for 3 days.
Have you seen that video? The guy...
Yeah.
Well, that's the stuff that you can. Actually. That's the stuff that you can get to. That's a delivery point, and they're going to put it in a rig and haul it deep red. These guys probably put in New Mexico somewhere and popped out over by New Jersey or something. Who knows? The tunneling systems that are going on, what's going on underground, we have no idea.
Have you been to Dulce?
I was there, and I'll bring this up, and I hope I'm not jeopardizing anybody, but we were at the Aztec UFO Paranormal Conference in 2009, and I went to go meet Norio Hayakawa because we'd had him on our Crypto Four Corners program and wanted to go meet him, and we went and met him. But when he was giving his dissertation in front of all these people, one of the things he said is, this might all be a cover, this whole Dulce thing, with all the underground base and aliens and everything else. He said this might just be a cover for a nuclear waste storage facility for Los Alamos Labs. And I looked over at my friend Dave Ortiz and I said, if there's any truth in that matter, this man just killed himself. Right. He just committed harikari in front of everybody. So I hadn't planned on going to
Have you been to that area?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't planned on going to the Dulce conference.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Because
is there really a Highway 666?
It's been redesignated. Yes. The name's been changed.
But
Yes.
Yes. No, but back to Dulce, because I've heard back to Dulce about it.
Well, I hadn't planned on going up the next day because I'm not a UFO guy, really. I don't have an F-16 to catch one. The other stuff I'm working on, I could probably catch or capture something, or if need be, if it needed to be harvested, kill it. So I'm in that frame of mind. I'm not a UFO guy. I can't catch one. That type of deal. But with what Norio said,
right.
I said we're going up there, and I put together friends of mine. And we got there, and it was standing room only at the Hotel Conference Center. They had to move it to a big convention center for the tribe. And I helped Norio pack out some of his equipment and his PA equipment and everything like that. Thank God I didn't touch the driver's door handle on his Jeep. Because the next day he came down with a neurotoxin.
Oh.
I didn't find out about this till I did the Albuquerque Paranormal UFO conference a couple years later. He came down with a neurotoxin, was on his back for 6 months. And they believe they introduced it to his driver's handle door.
Yeah.
I got a call from Christopher O'Brien.
Wow.
I got a call from Christopher O'Brien. He goes, "You want a guide for the governor for Ventura? He's coming out to New Mexico." And I said, "Oh, sure. Where's he want to go?" He goes, "Dulce." I said, "No." Nah, not going to do it. So I hooked him up with somebody else. But, it's interesting. When the governor got there, they gave him hugs and kisses. He signed the 8x10 glossies, patted everybody on the back, shook everybody's hand, and they told him to leave. You can't film here. A couple days later, Anthony Sanchez shows up, and he wrote UFO Highways.
He's the one that was poisoned, supposedly.
Well, here's what happens is he goes up to Archuleta Mesa. He's got people up on Archuleta Mesa with him and everything else. I hear him on Camelot radio at like 3 a.m, dying. And I'm backtracking.
I remember that show.
I finally got a hold of him.
Yeah.
And he goes, what we did, we backtracked everything. And he said, it all comes down to a Mexican restaurant we went to off of the Jicarilla Reservation. A balding, middle-aged white guy brought him his drink for the meal service. They didn't see him for the rest of the meal service. When they went back to the restaurant, they asked him about this guy. They said no one like that has ever worked here. So they slipped him a Mickey, and he got a neurotoxin that they could not identify.
Yep. I remember that was the first time I ever heard of him, was on Project Camelot. And I've since met him. And he has his own radio show, too. Yeah, I'm in Tim Beckley's book, The Alien Underground Biolab at Dulce. I'm giving my take on what's going on there, and I share a chapter with Nario Hayakawa. I will not be returning to Dulce. And here's the deal. If it is all a big smokescreen for an underground nuclear waste storage facility, that's a deal that you can't do anywhere in the United States, but a separate sovereign country could sign off on it and let something be there. And I think if we could, and this is the thing about Norio Hayakawa, he went on behalf of the workers at Area 51 back in the 70s and planted lawsuits and won because of all the mysterious diseases and lesions and weird leukemias and stuff the workers were coming down with at Area 51. He won the lawsuit. And his big concern about Dulce is we've got a population, I believe at one time, that was well over 4,000 that has dipped down to around 1,600 people. Some of them leave. I think most of them die. And if we could get access to local health clinics or anything near what's going on there, we'd probably have 10 times the national average of leukemia and cancers. So whatever's going on there, somebody at some time made a deal with the devil. If it is an underground nuclear waste storage facility, then they're in very close proximity to the groundwater and everything else being polluted and tampered. So whatever's going on. And what I've heard, what bothers me about it, because one of the first things you look for when you go to look for, say you're a traveler, it's an ancient saying, you always look to see how the people are and if the water is poisoned. Right?
Yeah.
That tells you about where you are and how the animals are. And I've heard it's dead silent there. You don't see birds, you don't see animals, you don't hear anything.
And there's a bunch of Sasquatch up there too, or at least there was.
Oh.
Bunch of Sasquatch
okay.
up there. So, I don't know, and I'm not going to find out.
Have you heard that possibly the
Right.
Nephilim or the fallen angels, they actually do something with the nuclear waste or the radiation that they actually thrive on it?
I don't know. And the thing is, we go back to the Dulce thing. If 1% of what has been reported coming out of there is going on, it's very, very disturbing. If we have given in to some ultra-terrestrial situation in exchange for knowledge, then there are different floors. I guess there's 9 levels to this facility, and we've got people who said they've been down there. Everyone who says they've been down there, saw it, had anything to do with it, they're all dead. Everybody.
Right.
I mean,
Who's
the
guy
last
that got
guy,
supposedly into the fight?
the firefight, was
The
that,
guy-
oh gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what's that
his
guy's name?
Phil.
And that's the thing. I asked the chief of police of Dulce.
Schneider.
Yeah,
Schneider. Yeah.
Schneider. I asked the chief of police of Dulce during the
Okay.
height of the cattle mutilations and UFO sightings and everything else. He was on duty. He was the chief of police, essentially. I asked him point blank, were you there when bodies came up from under the ground? And he said, no.
Okay. Fair enough.
And UFO hunters came to Dulce, did their little episode. He didn't even talk to them, but something that got said in that episode got traced back to him. He came down with a strange illness that they couldn't diagnose or treat. He had to tough it out for about 6 months. So whatever's going on there, in that morning of the conference, a black helicopter flew over Main Street, telephone pole level, essentially. That had never happened before. And when we got there was no security. There were people driving around in unmarked vehicles, writing down license plates, and I had 2 of my associates with me, and I said, go pound on their windows, run them off.
Wow.
And then when they got to the big conference center, I didn't know what to do. They had no security. Nobody was looking out for nobody. I put one of my associates at the back door and one of my associates at the front door. And it isn't like you could say, well, look for somebody acting weird. It's a UFO conference. You got people wearing tinfoil on their heads, But at least some semblance of security, keep an eye on stuff. Anybody goes for an Oreo,
Right.
take them out. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I don't think they really expected a third of the people who showed up there. It was big. They haven't done it since, and I pray for the people there. God bless them.
Who put it on?
Norio Hayakawa essentially put it together, and Christopher O'Brien
He's
was
the one
there.
that put it on. Okay.
Yeah, Christopher O'Brien was there, and associates of Nick Redfern were there, and so forth. So I mean, there was quite a bit. We were filming Mysterious Creatures of the Southwest with David Asher Childress and Ron James and Christopher O'Brien. So good documentary. I mean, so I was kind of busy with that and then checking back on the conference and everything. So.
Wow.
Interesting.
We're going to take a soft break
Dulce,
here.
Seen anything like that?
Dulce is just something
Are there any?
I don't want to know at this point. I just don't. I don't want to know,
Right.
and I don't want any part of it. And I feel sorry for
You
those
think there are
folks.
more like that?
There might be, but I mean, if it is just a big psyop for an underground nuclear waste storage facility, that's unfortunate for these people because it's an early for everybody.
Hey, hold on, guys. We're just going to take a soft break here. You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, CJ Mars Radio. I'm Mike Gray, your host. This is Parley. And we're talking to CJ Johnson and Ann Francis, our special guest. And
JC.
JC.
Johnson.
Did I say
CJ
Casey?
the owner.
What did I say?
CJ.
Did I say Casey? Did I say CJ?
This is
I'm sorry.
Kasem.
It's
The top
Casey Kasem. Oh, that poor bastard. He had all the money in the world, and yet
Where is
his
he?
wife did to him.
Oh, where is he right now?
And he was the voice of Shaggy.
I'm going to go rescue his ass. Where is he?
He's dead.
Oh, well then I guess I
Died.
can't do much for him. Oh,
Yeah, his wife.
I didn't follow that story.
Did they ever settle his estate? That poor guy.
I don't know. I don't think so. His wife was a lunatic.
His wife was fighting.
I mean, here's a guy with all the money in the world, and yet look what happens to you, you know?
Anyway.
But anyway, that's another show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Poor
that would be a
Casey
good show.
Kasem.
Yeah, poor.
He
Yeah.
was a cool dude. I mean, I grew up listening to his top 40 and everything else.
Zoinks. Yeah.
Who doesn't love Shaggy? Come on, and we're watching Scooby-Doo as little kids, and why is Scooby-Doo and Shaggy always hungry? Because they've been smoking dope. We didn't know that, but the creators of the cartoon, we've got our beatnik hippie dude that's always hungry from the munchies. And
He
anyway,
did a lot of he did a lot of voice work, a lot of cartoons, but
a point of nostalgia.
I think you're right.
Scrappy-Doo ruined Scooby-Doo.
They jumped the shark.
Scrappy-Doo ruined Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I'm glad in a later Scooby-Doo movie they kicked Scrappy-Doo out to the side of the road in the Scooby-Doo. He peed all over Thelma or somebody. Anyway, aside from that,
they got rid of Fred. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm totally derailing the Scooby-Doo talk. Now, you've focused mainly on like the Southwest. Have you ever considered going out to like New Jersey, looking for the Jersey Devil or any of those myths?
It would be a situation where we've got reoccurring something's going on to bring us out there. This thing's showing up every night or every week, or this happened or that. It has to be. We don't go look for anything. We essentially follow up on people with activities. Ongoing activities.
Gotcha.
Look at the videos.
I see, yeah.
We're not out looking for anything. We follow up as money permits and as funding permits. We follow up on situations where people have ongoing situations that we stay at. Habitual situations. That's where we show up. Or something totally freaky that just happened and the people want to talk to somebody, need someone to talk to, And a lot of times, you get to these folks and they think they're the only one this has ever happened to, the situation, whatever it is. They think they're alone. And when, you're a psychologist, a psychiatrist and everything, talking to them, say, hey, this is happening. Lots of people all around the world. You're not unique to the situation. This is not unique. What happened to you? It's happening. Blah, 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 everywhere. And that's where you get in and you help people. And you get them to open up, like the ultra-terrestrial investigation. I couldn't run camera on those folks the first day because all they could do was cry. Next day, after some whiskey shots and vodka around the fire and a fun night, the next day, hey, this guy's okay, and these guys are cool. They like to party a little bit, and you gain people's trust by letting them get to know you. And I'm not out there trying to make a quick buck off you, whatever. We're responding because you asked for help. That's why we're here. And we're here out of our own pocket.
Have you ever seen, Mac Toomey's wrote a book called, I think, Crypto Terrestrial.
I've heard about that.
On the cover,
I haven't read it.
Yeah, on the cover is this, an Aryan gray, I guess, or, a bald, you know what I mean? And he died shortly after that book was published.
Well, my feeling on the whole ultra-terrestrial situation, they've been here the whole time. And if you can find something that can get through the Van Allen belts of radiation, we're a prison planet, dudes. Sorry.
Yeah.
We are a prison planet. And I don't want to get into the moon landing program. I don't even want to go there, but I'm telling you, even NASA's still talking about openly, well, if we could find a way to get through the Van Allen belts, we could send people here and there. Like, well, didn't you already go to the moon? Well, let's not even go there. I'm saying essentially what's trapped on this earth with us has been here with us the whole time. The demonic realm of the New Testament is the skies. It's the skies. And so that's what they map.
There's a bubble. There's something keeping them in.
The princely powers of the air. They can't leave. They're stuck here with us. And we're a fallen planet also. It's a fallen planet. And they're stuck here with us because they were sentenced to this realm with us. So they're kind of bored. So they don't have much to do other than come and mess with your life, our destiny, our future, and humankind because they hate us. They've hated us from the very beginning. There was a war in heaven over making something in their likeness and giving us free will. and they're here with us, and they hate us.
And they seem to they really relish repeating history. The same.
Yeah,
it's almost like a TV show.
Could you guys write a playbook with a happy ending? Let's do that.
Yeah, well,
No.
it's almost like they program people to do deeds that they just want to see over and over again.
I guess so. They co-opt people and stuff. Useful idiots. And in the end, here's what it comes down to: kill everybody, but leave about 550 million useful idiots to be our slaves and sovereign to us. And we'll have a party, and we'll have a new earth and a new everything. It'll be all new.
Yeah.
It'll be heaven on earth, and you're going to live forever. I promise. I'm not going to lie to you. Well, I lied to you before. I'm not lying to you this time. You're going to live forever. We're going to have a party. But get rid of all these people, especially these Christians. Get rid of them. And have some useful idiots, and we'll have a party. And they've been buying the same old lie forever. But there's things in place now that it's very unfortunate for all of us that we're all going to have to suffer through this unless we have divine intervention. There's some scary things coming to this world. It's already happening. There's things in place that are already happening. The folks getting their heads cut off. Things of that, all the horrific things. That's going to be coming to our streets. In fact, it already is. We've got beheadings in the United States, but there is a princely power situation going on. It's going to get really ugly, folks. It's going to be a real gut check for everybody. It is.
And, you don't know what's real, although I know certain things that are fake and staged, but yeah.
The whole world's upside down, right? It's upside down. Yeah. You've got this, that, and other ways. Good is evil, evil's good. I mean, this is all out of Scripture. It's another repeat.
Christopher Hitchens wrote a real fascinating thing where he writes about that. Doctors don't heal. Lawyers don't practice justice. Lawyers and justice don't. Yeah, everything's upside down. Everything. Teachers don't teach. Our food is poisoning us. Our water, is poisoning. You know what I mean? Yeah, they've tainted.
I think a real power we have.
Everything. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, the thing is, let's go back to China in the 1950s. We've got good statistical records in China in the 1950s. There was virtually no cancer. When they started getting cancer is when the white man's cigarettes showed up. And the different things that are going on. The poisons in the food, the GMOs, you feed pigs GMOs, constantly their livers and organs turn to mush. It's all designed, it's all a slow kill. We're in the middle of the great culling of us useless eaters. Be aware of that. Wake up to it. The overlords hammer you daily with aluminum and barium, and it rains down on you, and that barium's hell on your immune system. That aluminum stores up in your medulla oblongata and gives you early Alzheimer's. It's going on. It's happening. We're in the great culling. Most of the elite who are aware of this, they've left. You got a lot of cool rich people that are just rich, and they're cool, and they're still here, and they're going to be in the same Alzheimer's wards as we are. If we're allowed to have Alzheimer's, I think we're probably going to have some death panels that take us out. If we're not going to be useful to the collective, we're out. We're gone. It's done. It's over. So you got to see everything coming into place for a totalitarian society. That is what is coming into place.
In the United States or
yes. Everywhere. But the United States,
it's a global
we're going to be,
yeah,
it's a global thing. We're going to be the hardest nut to crack because we've got too many people out there, too many veterans out there, too many people who are awake, who know the agenda, who know what's going on, and they're awake, they're wise, and they're aware, and they've made plans. And that's all it. Well, let me do a Forrest Gump. That's all I got to say about that. Yeah, so there. Leave it at that. Anyway, we should probably cover something more cryptid, but let me warn you folks. Trials and tribulations are coming. A lot of, and my good Christian people out there, God bless you. I'm a follower of Christ. But the ones who told you had a ticket out with the raptura, the rapture, I'm along the lines of what Steve Quayle is saying. That's not what Scripture tells us. We're going to go through this. Those people getting their heads cut off by ISIS are very much a Christian as you are. Those people being persecuted, tortured, burned, stabbed, dismembered are every bit a Christian as you are. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. ISIS is just like Al Qaeda, a Pentagon creation.
Well, it's the best enemy money can buy.
Mm-hmm.
And why are these guys wearing gloves and full face masks when it's 125 degrees out? Because they probably got white skins and tattoos from special ops and stuff.
That's a U.S. United States Marine Corps, USMC. That's a fact.
Oath breakers. If you're out there and you're an oath breaker, you're a tyrant, a traitor, treason. You've given up all your rights to being a citizen of the United States. I'll leave it at that.
Interesting. Okay.
What about Loch Ness Monster being a giant? Did you see Loch Ness Monster is a giant catfish? That's the latest speculation. The Wells catfish.
A sturgeon? Or a sturgeon?
No, the Wells catfish. Well, the sturgeons are huge.
Yeah.
They can like 1,100 pounds. You know, that is just such a curious thing what's going on there. And once again, let's go back to the furry people, Bigfoot. There's three things I'm looking for when I go out onto an investigation or a sighting. You know, we're reciprocating a sighting, showing up, talking with the witnesses and everything. Having traveled the country as a researcher, three things I look for. Number one, is it a rogue male? Number two, does it have an attachment to a family member? Number three, show me the calories. So with that basis, they're going to Loch Ness. The calories are pretty few and far between. We've got some salmon runs that come into the loch. Other than that, they've got not a whole lot to eat. They got a lot of eels going on there. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that.
But don't you think they could go down into deeper, into maybe into caverns, like under the earth? Because there are aren't there underground rivers?
If they're part mammalian, they're going to have to come up for air, though. You know, you can go down there and take a dirt nap for 30, 40 minutes. You're going to have to come up and get some air, I would think.
There's air in the caverns, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, if they're gilled, I guess they could stay underground for a long time. I mean, underwater for a long time. I don't know. I'm not saying there isn't a Loch Ness thing. I'm just saying I've got a problem with the calories there.
All right.
Right. There's no.
I've looked at some real serious studies of what is in the loch all the time. If they love eels, then they're going to be fine because there's lots of eels there. And I've seen Jeremy Wade. I believe Jeremy Wade went there and caught a whole bunch of eels. There's plenty of those. If that is a food source, I think whatever's down there, plesiosaur or whatever it is going to be fine. Don't know.
Hey, was it on your channel that I saw Little Folk?
That's on the Navajo Skinwalkers and Legends. I probably shared that with you. That is something, if anybody out there wants to see it, just contact me. And I know you're a real person. It's a private link on YouTube. That video, I don't have anything for sale anymore, but that video is a private link. I'd be happy to share it with you. And the Little Folk with the Navajo people, it's a really long, dark, deep, twisted situation with the little people. And that's something else, in Navajo Skinwalkers and Legends, I wanted to expand a little bit. But, recent information, recent things, recent friendships I've made with people who have contact with these little folks. We've got a lady, a Navajo grandmother. She's about, I think she knows she's 103. When she was born, the records weren't very good, but the little people come to her, and she's been feeding them for many years. She's even got little Barbie tea sets and stuff that she puts the food out on, and a little table for them.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
no, wait. When you say little, these are little people wearing human,
they're under 18 inches tall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they talk?
Think serious.
She feeds them. She cuts a watermelon up in tiny little pieces, cuts the meat up in
She
tiny
feeds
little
them.
pieces. Yeah. And what they do, and sometimes, sometimes she can be there when they're eating and they're very comfortable with her. Sometimes they don't show up and she leaves the food out for them and they come later. They always leave her tobacco packets, little tiny tobacco packets, and herb packets. She makes tea out of the herbs and smokes the tobacco. And she's healthy as a horse. Other situations with the little people, I've heard horrific, horrible things with the little people.
So they can be mean.
The Navajo Skinwalkers and Legends, Leonard tells you, Chief Dan tells you, they'll come and curse you and poke holes in your tires and undo your brake line.
Yeah.
It's things like, they'll really mess with you. So it's better, I think, in my opinion, it's better not to have contact with them. But we had a situation up on the Carrizo Mountains. Chief Dan was up there. And in the Navajo way, we found this old hogan, and we're just kind of investigating, walking around it. And Leonard goes, oh, no, this is a Chady house. In Navajo lore is when someone dies in a house, they abandon the house. Nobody lives in there again.
Right.
And this was one of those hogans. And we didn't know. Like, we're sorry.
Right.
And we found this bluebird in the ground, head first with a crushed skull, still flapping its wings, like he hit the ground at 100 miles an hour. And his mate is up in the tree yelling, screaming at us. I'm like, hey, we didn't do this. But what the hell happened? I wish I could speak bird, but it was weird. So we'll go around and we can see where they left the offering. They left the offering for his last meal. And we can see where the tinfoil was. He probably brought him some mutton ribs and stuff, spiritually the last meal and so forth. So I was like, I'm really sorry. I don't want to mess with nothing. The next day we were packing up off that mountain and a porcupine quill just missed Chief Dan and hit the tent material.
Oh.
His tent. And it was a dart. And we looked, there were no tracks, no nothing. I think a little person shot a dart at him. And I gave that, we eventually got that porcupine quill to Christopher O'Brien, and weird things happened with that because it was being sent in for analysis. I don't know if they ever even got it back, but I guarantee you the Dene Navajo Skinwalkers have neurotoxins that the Department of Defense would love to get their hands on. They got mummy powder they can blow into your face, paralyze you.
What is the origin of of these little people?
It's just something, talking to the elders and so forth, something that's always just been around. It's always been there. It's always been a part of their culture. They're tricksters. They're not to be trusted. Avoid them. Pretty much, that's the gist of the whole thing.
Do they look like little humans or?
What I've had described to me, and I've done many interviews, and I got a video interview somewhere, but this young lady ran into a Navajo couple dressed like from like the 1950s. The gentleman had on blue jeans, a black vest, and a blue velvet shirt and a cowboy hat. The female had on a full blue velvet dress, concho belt, and turquoise seashells. I mean, all dolled up. And she said they were like 18 inches tall.
Oh.
They didn't say anything to her. They just looked at her.
Yeah.
And she boogied, got out of the area. But anatomically, the arms, the legs are all the right lengths. What I've heard, the head's probably just anatomically a little bigger than, if you saw somebody in the regular human stature, you'd say, oh, that's a big head. So it's the head's a little bit bigger.
And did they live
anatomically, everything's fine. I don't know. I really don't know. I've got a friend who was up on a ranch in Utah with a Navajo lady he'd married, and they were all over the place. And they would sit on the windowsill watching him drink his coffee. And they told him, don't look at them very long. Don't say anything to them. Don't make funny eye contact with them. So he just set about looking to see how they got into his barns, to see how they got into these different areas, the areas that they were showing up in. And he was totally freaked around them the whole time. He couldn't wait to get off that ranch.
Good Lord.
Well, speaking of, going back to the Skinwalker, Amelia, she's fascinated me since you put that up. That story.
And then, that was the most pleasant story
me.
she could tell. And I wanted something at least fairly pleasant to put on, I recorded that probably back in 2007, and I was strictly on Google. I didn't go to YouTube till 2010 because Google let me put up videos that were a half an hour or better, because some of these interviews and some of the stuff we were doing was a half an hour, and YouTube limited me to 15 minutes, so I didn't go to YouTube till 2010 with some of the shorter videos. But what she was talking about with the wolfen entity that came and tried to entice her, I believe, niece or cousin to open the door. This thing's 8 foot tall. Right. This thing could lift the roof up and jump in. This thing could tear the door off. It needed an invitation and was trying to entice the occupants of the house or Hogan to open the door for them. There's something keeping them out. Something needs to be invited in. Even in the physical entity of this demonic evil, you have to invite them in. She told the story, and I'll tell it here, is her family members were driving down Route 666 before it got renamed. This little gnome dude jumped out in front of their car. They swerved to miss him. The car rolled, and they all got knocked a little bit silly, and they came to their senses. And they were upside down. They looked in the back seat. The baby who had been strapped in his baby seat was gone. They crawled out of their vehicle, and they looked. The little gnome dude had the baby, and he tore the baby in half.
Wow.
And then he ran off. Then, half an hour, 45 minutes later, the authorities get there, and cordioning off the scene, took most of the family members to the hospital, but they took the baby too. And they said the baby got ejected and went through the windshield and somehow got cut in half. But they saw this gnome dude tear the baby in half. And while they were gone, the upside down wrecked car, the gnome dude went around with the baby's blood and wrote symbols and stuff all over the car. Weird, sick, goofy, scary stuff. There's a lot of dark.
Well, and you said her family is pretty much.
They found the Lord. After they found the Lord, all this stuff stopped.
Right.
Now,
stopped.
I don't know for years, and like I said, that was the most pleasant story she could tell me. I said, "Well, do you have another story?" wait, that's not going to work. She came over to interview. She wanted to talk about it. And the most pleasant thing she could tell me is, well, my grandma summoned a skinwalker to come and try to entice us to let him in so he could kill us or bring us into the cult. That's the most pleasant story she could tell us. So,
what her grandmother? What her grandmother? What now?
Her grandmother was the intervening factor making this thing come the entity, the Wolfman. She'd sit on the side of the hill and just smile and sit there for 24 hours at a time. Wouldn't get up to go pee or go get some fry bread or anything like that. She just sat there with this goofy smile on her face.
So she was somehow the anchor that brought this thing forward.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Is we did a pilot for I think it's now Haunted Highways. It was going to be Paranormal Highways. Anyway, they came out to the Four Corners area and filmed with us. And we wrapped this pilot in about 16 hours because we had so many crazy things happen. And they ended up with Jack Osborne and some other folks running this show and whatever. I'm not even going to go there, but, God bless them. We took them out to an area where this young man had been attacked by a skinwalker. And this guy wasn't furry or anything. He was painted up. And this kid was 14 at the time, and he was in pretty good shape. He was a boxer. And this painted up dude grabbed him, and he hit him as hard as he could. He said it was like hitting a brick wall. But he got away. He was going to end up someplace as a sacrifice, and then they would dine on his organs, his softer tissues from the rest of his body. If the practicing elders found him fair, they'd probably practice some necrophilia on him. And then from there, they would make potions and powders and bone shards and everything else of him. Thank God he got away and was able to tell his story. But while we were there, Chief Dan is there, and I think he's 75 now, just turned 75. And there was a lady, there's a church on this property, and there was a Navajo lady who wouldn't talk to us, wouldn't have anything to do with us. And Leonard went over, proper Navajo gentleman, Yate, Ishpanana, being a nice guy, and started talking to her. And she said, I want to tell you a story. I don't want my daughter, because it was her daughter whose son got attacked by the skinwalker. She says, I want to tell you, I got a prayer request through the church to go out to this family and pray for this man. And I was scared because I knew this family, I knew who they were, and I knew what they were doing. But I went. I knocked on the door, and they let me in, and there were 3 men laying on a bearskin rug. And she said, who am I supposed to pray for? And the lady said, the man in the middle, the old man. You're supposed to go pray with him. And so she went, talked to him, and she was holding his hand. He goes, I'm going to die in a couple of days. I know where I'm going. I don't want to go there. I want to be with your God. I want to be with your God. I want to pray the sinner's prayer. And so she prayed the sinner's prayer with him. And while she's praying, these guys, their hands are morphing into claws and hideous things. And they're trying to hide it from her. And the old man yelled out from the bearskin, he says, go do what you were paid to do. I'm not going with you anymore. And she said they got off that bearskin and just morphed and disappeared. She told us, Chief Dan. She didn't talk to us, but, there's some kind of physical transformation that happens. I can't explain it. I don't know what it is, other than evil.
That's incredible,
Well, it was about 6 months before Chief Dan told
So basically,
the
they were
story.
laying on so they were draining him, basically.
And that's probably what it was. That's probably what it was. Good observation, Mike. Probably what it was.
Mm-hmm.
We get the last of his hoo-ha before he checks out.
Wow.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show. We've got 2 minutes. Is there anything you want to wrap this
How
up
did
with?
you
This
meet Chief Dan? Oh,
I
sorry.
married his stepdaughter back in 1991. I married into
that explains the connection.
Yeah, I married into the Dene Navajo tribe back in 91.
Wow. Well, listen,
even if you divorce out of them, you're always a part of their family. And they told me you didn't know when you married her, you married all of us.
Oh, good Lord.
That's all right. No, that's my wonderful people. I love them all to this day. I totally love them. My youngest daughter's half Navajo. So, yeah. Cool. Beautiful night. And Chief Dan and I have been pals for over 25 years. Love it. And he's one hell of a tracker. He could track a cricket through a snowstorm.
Really?
He's awesome. He's awesome. I want to give a shout out to George Harvey. I want to give a shout out to all you guys, Nicholas, Tomahawk Begay, Les, all you guys. God bless you. Kevin Pocket, God bless you. You guys that are still in the Four Corners, man. I'm sending you stuff. Follow up when you can, where you can.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time, and JC, I want to thank you for coming, and I'd love to have you back if you'll come. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I would love to come back. Anytime anytime you want. Yeah, listen, email me anytime you want to be back, and I'll have you on. And probably most of the people, they're going to want to have you on after hearing this.
Well, once again, don't take my word for anything. Anything I've said to you, go check the scriptures. Go check this. Check Google. Go see our boots on the ground with what we've been up to, been doing. If I was pulling things out of my ass, so be it. But go look at the videos. Go look at what we've been up to. Have a look.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank J.C. Johnson. I want to thank Anne Francis. I want to thank Cynthia Jean-Pierre, my producer. I want to thank everyone in the chat room, Dita and Roger. And I want to thank the audience for listening. I'm Mike Gray, your host. This is Parley, and we are out of here.